And right now, an update on our other developing story. Libyan Prime Minister Ali Zaidan has been kidnapped by armed militants in Tripoli, although some conflicting reports suggest he was actually arrested by governmental anti-crime forces. Beltrue, who is following the story, is here now.
Well, the latest report is that a rebel group has said that they are responsible for the kidnapping of Prime Minister Ali Zaidan in retaliation to the Libyan role in this US raid in Libya, which took Abu Anas al-Libi, who was supposed to be an al-Qaeda suspect. This raid happened on Saturday. US Special Forces basically took the man who's implemented in 1998 bombing of US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, which killed 224 people. There were reports that Ali Zaidan was involved. He himself, however, on Tuesday condemned the US raid, saying that Libyans should be tried in their own countries, but fell short of really blasting America, saying that it wouldn't actually harm US-Libyan relations. The other report, however, which conflicts with this, is that he was in fact kidnapped by armed groups. He was taken earlier on today from the Corinthia Hotel in Tripoli by armed men. Eyewitnesses on the scene said it looked more like an arrest, as there was no violence, and the government has said they don't know where he is. He was taken to an undisclosed location. Now, after the US Special Forces raid on Saturday, there was a huge backlash from Islamist militant groups in Libya who said that they wanted to stage some form of retaliation for the behavior of the US in their country and had threatened several attacks on gas pipelines, for example. So it could be that this is part of that Islamic militant backlash on the US raid, but we haven't got any confirmation yet, so we're going to keep watching this story in the coming hours.
So there are conflicting reports about the Libyan Prime Minister's disappearance. Let's now discuss this more with German journalist Manuel Oxenreiter, who's been following this story. Manuel, nice to see you. So the Interior Ministry claims it was an arrest. Why don't we know where the Prime Minister is being held?
Well, first of all, these news are not surprising at all. And we still talk about Libya like an existing state when we listen to the news that the ministry says it was an arrest, armed groups say it was a kidnapping. So we have to take into account that Libya is a disintegrated state. It's a disintegrated area. And when we talk about ministries, we talk about something else than if we talk about ministries in existing states or in states with a state order. So it's not surprising at all that we get those confusing news. By the way, these are not the first confusing news we receive from Libya since the so-called revolution. Just the attention went away from Libya within the last month. It went to Syria. But in Libya, we see that there is a country, a disintegrated country, controlled by warlords, controlled by those gangs with the biggest guns. So they do the government politics, and what they do is confusing for us, of course. So I'm not surprised at all.
All right, so we have reports that there was an arrest, and also a rebel group claims that it was a kidnapping, as you say. If you had to guess, what do you think has happened to the Prime Minister?
Maybe there is no conflict between an arrest and a kidnapping, because we don't know who is now working for the Interior Ministry. Look, if we go 2 years back and if we see who were the ground troops of the NATO Air Force and the French military blowing away the Gaddafi government, we see that these were Qaeda gangs, that these were jihadis, that these were criminal, violent gangs, and those gangs are today integrated in the so-called Libyan government. We have to see just one example: Abdelhakim Belhaj, a jihadi with strong links to Qaeda, became military commander of the Libyan capital, and he is now politician in Libya. These are the allies, the so-called allies of the West. But the problem is who's useful in such politics. So you cannot rely on those allies, and this is maybe the lesson the West receives now. And maybe we see now that the revolution eats its children by the kidnapping of the Libyan Prime Minister.
Right, and if the rebels are behind the abduction, why is the Prime Minister a target there?
When we go back 2 years, we have to see what role the Prime Minister played at the time of the so-called Libyan revolution. The Prime Minister was located in Europe. He was heading for an opposition Libyan group. And he was the one, by the way, who was lobbying a lot at that time at the French President Nicolas Sarkozy for a military action against the Libyan government. So he was in Europe the poster boy of the Libyan revolution, a nice face which covered the fact that on the ground are fighting terrorists, Qaeda guys, criminal gangs. Maybe there is now an inner conflict between those gangs and those poster boys of the revolution, and of course there are many conflicts. It's about money, it's about corruption, it's also about selling interests, and Libya is a country with natural resources, so a lot of groups claim their interest of having benefit. So I think there are many conflicts we don't see now at the surface which might play a role in this also.
All right. German journalist Manuel Oxenreiter. Manuel, thank you so much indeed for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.